now we can start. We're ready to go.
All right, so let's call the meeting to order. It's what, a little after 10? And we'll do roll call, please.
Okay. President Alvarado,
Here.
Director Sudeth, I'm sorry, Vice President Sudeth,
Here.
Director Weiner, Director Weiner.
Here.
Thank you. Director Stanley
Here.
and Director Zepeda.
Here.
All are accounted for.
Okay, next item, please.
The next item, sorry.
It's all right, I'm doing the same thing.
I apologize. Okay. I apologize. Something's wrong here. Okay, here we are. I'm sorry. Thank you very much for your patience. The Pledge of Allegiance or observation of a moment of silence.
Okay. I pledge allegiance
To the
to the
flag
flag of the United
United States of America,
And
to
to
the
the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
God,
God,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
as soon as possible.
as
Okay,
soon as
before we
possible.
go to the next item, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Vice President Sudeth, who is chair of this committee. Take it away, Director, Vice President Sudeth.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, would you read the next item, please?
Approval of agenda order. Any member of the board committee may request an agenda item be postponed, removed, or heard out of order. An item may not be added to the agenda unless it meets the requirements of an emergency situation as defined in Government Code Section 54956.5. Do I need to do something else? Do I need to do something else?
No, Gina, you don't. Just the board needs to decide if they're, if this is okay. They can do consensus of the agenda, or if anybody wants to change any.
Okay, sorry, I was just out there in limbo. Thank you, Lisa.
I move to accept the agenda order.
And I'll
Do
second
you hear
it.
me?
Yes,
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, who was that?
This is Caesar.
Thank you.
I have a question, so when the chair recognizes me, I'd like to ask it.
is it on this one, this item?
It's regarding, it's a question of process, so it's a,
Vice President Sudeth, you're muted in case, I don't know if you are trying to talk, but you're muted right now. There.
I don't know why it keeps muting. It keeps muting itself. I'm not muting it. So I don't know why it keeps muting itself.
It's trying to censor you.
Yes, I know. Why are you trying to censor me, Justin?
He censored himself.
I am not, I'm not pressing any buttons for you. You know,
Yeah, it keeps muting itself.
I'll keep it open for you if you would like.
Thank you, sir. Director Weiner, yes, sir. Go ahead.
go ahead, Harry.
Yes.
So I would like to attend, but not participate in the meeting and let it be a subcommittee meeting. And so I intend to mute, but the votes keep asking for all who attend. And I would like to understand how the chair might or change the process back to a subcommittee. Does anybody know?
I can answer that question for you if you'd like.
Go ahead.
So there isn't any way to change it. Again, because all 5 of you are in attendance, the only way to change it to a committee would be if only the 2 members of the committee attend and other board members were in attendance in the audience, quote unquote, the public. So even if you don't participate by voting or saying anything because you're in attendance as a board member and not a member of the public, it has to be a board meeting, and it's noticed as a special board meeting for that purpose.
Isn't there, I remember reading in Robert's rules where one can vote present, but not have any effect on the vote.
Well, there's no voting in committees anyway, other than, I mean, you're doing the committee approval. That's sort of just a unanimous thing. You don't really have to do a motion, but there is no technically voting on anything in a meeting anyway, because it's a committee. So there's only recommendations to the board.
The full board.
Okay, well,
Which I guess at this meeting you
I
could.
intend to shake my head at what I don't intend to shake my head or approve anything. I intend to be present. So from going forward, if there's a roll call, please accept the fact that when you call my name, I'm just not going to comment. Thank you.
Thank you. So, are there any objections to, so we are approving the agenda at this point. If there are no objections, which is what I'm looking for right now, or any more discussion. The
No
agenda.
objections from me. I'm like Harry. I'm like a ghost.
Okay, so we have unanimous approval of the agenda as it stands. Gina?
Yes.
Madam
Yes.
Secretary,
Yes,
the agenda is approved.
yes.
Okay.
It was approved and seconded.
Yes, well, it was moved and seconded, so it's now approved.
Okay.
Yes, next.
The next item on the agenda is public comment. Would you like for me to read the entire thing?
No, but do we have any public comment submitted?
No, we don't.
We can move to the next item.
The next item is the consent calendar. Matters of the consent calendar are considered routine and will be approved without discussion. Prior to approval of the consent calendar, a member of the board or committee may request that an item be removed for discussion. If a member of the public would like to speak to an item on the consent calendar, the member should email myself, and nobody did, prior to the board or committee taking action. If the meeting is a study session, the planning committee will recommend the consent items for approval to the next regular board meeting. The item under that is Part A, which is the minutes. Approve or recommend board approval of the minutes of the March 9th, 2020 Planning Committee meeting.
I move to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Stanley. Do I have,
Second it.
thank you.
Who was that seconded?
Cepeda?
Okay, sorry about that. It's
So that was
the second time though.
So that was Director Stanley and Director Zepeda.
Yeah, so
Thank
Director
you.
Stanley made the first, and and Cepeda made the second.
Thank you so much. All right. Number 5. Hey, oh, sorry.
Wait. Do we have any objections?
None from me.
Abstentions? Discussion? It's been moved and seconded. No objections, no abstentions. All in favor?
Yes.
1, 2, myself.
Okay. Did I hear, I know I heard David. Who else did I hear?
You heard Zepeda,
Thank you.
Stanley, myself.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Should I continue?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Number 5, discussion. A, creation of a new job classification, health and safety coordinator.
Okay, good morning. I am Andrew Clow, your Deputy General Manager, and we're talking about the Health and Safety Coordinator position. This is the same reasoning is still in place for when this came before you in March of last year, and Gordon Times did a PowerPoint nice presentation explaining the history of health and safety and the reasons. And what this position is not asking for funding for an additional funded position, but what we're trying to do is give ourselves some flexibility and have 2 different job classifications available to us. The Health and Safety Manager position, which currently exists, and then this position, the Health and Safety Coordinator position. We've been out for recruitment twice for the Health and Safety Manager, and we've had difficulty filling the position. We're not getting a very large pool of candidates, and a number of the candidates are not really the right fit or the proper qualifications for the position. And in some cases, when we do find them, they're seeing it as a manager position, and their expectation is that they have staff. They have a health and safety staff, and they don't really need to be the hands-on person running the safety committee meetings and developing a lot of the protocols, SOPs, and procedures, et cetera. So there's a bit of a disconnect there. So what we're looking for is to add this position, which will give us the flexibility to go out and recruit for this. We think we're going to get a bigger talent pool we can choose from. Find somebody who's talented, who fits in. When I say fit in, I mean the right person that we need for this job. And then we can train them. We can bring them up to speed more. They can have the authority. They would report directly to me, and that we would then have the ability to promote them at some point into the Health and Safety Manager in the future. And if we did at some point need to have 2 positions, we'd be able to do that as well. But that would not be without coming back to the board for position approval. But at this point, all we're really trying to do is get availability to a larger talent pool. And in the interim, what we plan to do is go out with an RFP, identify a safety consultant to come in for a period of months, not a long-term temporary position, but with a very specific task of helping us develop a little bit more details, the framework of a health and safety program that then the coordinator can help implement. But we wouldn't be asking this person to have to come in with that level of expertise and understanding to be able to develop the entire framework of a program. And like I said, we recruited twice and tried to hire the position, and we're not being successful. So that's what this attempt is to find another talent pool that we can draw from. This would require more time on the part of the managers, myself included, than if we'd have had a manager position, someone with perhaps more experience. But we do feel like this is going to be a good way to go, and we wanted to run that past you. If you had any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Stanley.
My question is it possible to expand this role in light of what we're currently experiencing, so that not only is it the day-to-day health and safety of running our operation, but also has another section that has to deal with earthquakes, pandemics, whatever odd stuff is going on in the world that we have to deal with that affects our business.
Absolutely. And we've actually added in the description where it would have said design to ensure occupational health and safety, including emergency preparedness. We've added risk management, and there are also some other clauses, other duties as assigned, but that was very intentional to add the risk management for exactly that kind of purpose, Director Stanley, both earthquake preparedness, risk management around potentially, reviewing contracts for insurance. It just depends what person we get, what the workload looks like. Initially, there's going to be a lot to do to try to get the safety program up and running properly, but absolutely, we do intend to have it be broad-based like that.
Thank you.
Sarah Zepeda, do you have any questions?
No questions. I was trying to figure out how to unmute it. No question. Thank you. I was trying to press unmute. So for those of you using a computer, if you hold down your space bar, if you continuously hold it down, it temporarily unmutes you, and then you can let it go and it mutes you again.
Are there any other questions?
Sir, appreciate it.
Okay, this will, we intend to have this come to the board, but in about 2 meetings from now, I believe.
They'll be meeting first with the union. So this
Yeah.
does need to, we need to work with the union first. Actually, I'm sorry, Justin, is this an unrepresented position?
This is unrepresented, yes.
Oh, okay. So never mind. Exclude, unrepresented positions obviously don't go to the union. So I apologize.
This is currently posted.
No, the job,
No.
the job description is not, the classification is not created yet. It will come to the board first, as Andrew mentioned, in about 2 meetings. So the board
Okay.
needs to vote on the creation of the classification and set the salary range. And then once it's approved, then we would be able to do any recruitment.
Great, thanks. Thank
I have
you.
a point of clarification, please.
Yes, Ms. Director Stanley?
So we funded the manager position, but we're only, right now, we're just going to recruit for the coordinator and leave the manager position in limbo. Is that for right now, is that correct?
That's correct. We wouldn't ask for funding for both positions right now. What we would do is recruit for this position a lower classification than the manager position. And so there's funding already in place in the budget for that purpose. And we don't intend to put out the recruitment immediately, but rather we're going to get a consultant to help us put together, like I'd mentioned before, a framework, because we don't want to get somebody in this position and then just dump it on them and say, oh, well, you know what, we changed the title from manager to coordinator, but we still expect you to do everything we would have expected of the manager position. We don't want to set somebody up. So we're going to be working on a sort of an iterative approach like that. But it's not 2 positions at once. It's just filling one of the positions.
However, there might be a little bit of overlap, correct?
Between the positions?
There might be a little bit of overlap between with the temporary person we bring in to help set up the.
Oh, yes. Oh, definitely. That would be the intent. If we could make, we can make that work out, even if they're not here. They'll be working on a project basis. So it's not somebody that we're going to have come in and be a temporary staff person that's here all the time, but rather we'll scope out a specific set of tasks in a project that the consultant will deliver on. And one of those will be, once we have the position, then we'd ask them to come in and do a little bit of overlap, as you put it.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item, please.
The B op is for options for payroll and benefits administration services.
Sir Justin.
All right. Good morning. I'm Justin Lovell, Administrative Services Department Manager. Today I just want to talk about how we're exploring using a vendor to help us with payroll processing and benefits administration. So just to give you a little bit of how we got here, since I've started, I've been, one of the emphasis that I have had as a department manager is really looking at our systems across the department. So within administrative services, that and 2 big components of that is within the finance division and human resources. So on the payroll side, we use a timekeeping system called ExecuTime, and then that connects to our finance system in code that actually processes the payroll. And so since I've started, we ran into several, let's say, process issues. A lot of times it's related to the system setup and how it was configured many years ago. And so there's almost every pay period there happens, staff are having to call our vendors to help them work through particular issues or situations that have come up on the to make sure the payroll gets processed appropriately. And so what ends up happening is there's a lot of time spent on doing these just day-to-day tasks, routine tasks that happen all the time. And our staff that we have aren't able to really focus on the more larger and strategic components of operations within the finance and human resource functions. We just spend a lot of time trying to resolve issues within the existing system. And so we're looking at options to help improve those systems. So we've made some improvements on the existing system, but it hasn't gotten, it's not where we want it to be, and the system doesn't have all of the functions that I would like to have great customer service for our staff and our employees. And that could be things like self-service, making it a lot easier for staff to go forward and remotely enter their time. Since we've been in the shelter-in-place order, we've discovered that not everybody was set up to have access to remotely log into their timekeeping system. And so things like that, we want to make it easier for staff. And so we're looking at some vendors that offer essentially payroll service for us. Now this doesn't take away 100% of our duties and responsibilities as staff. Managers are still going to have to approve time. Staff still has to enter their time. There still has to be staff who are approving the total hours, verifying that everything is correct before it gets handed off to a vendor to actually do the payroll process. And then some other things that we've run into is that, as staff, we're not payroll experts. We're not payroll tax experts. And using a company that are, the quote unquote experts in that field with tax laws and different payroll rules, I think that would help us really focus on the core services of the district. And so as we're starting to examine that, that's on the payroll side. On the benefit side and just HR administration, we have several different systems that we're using to track employees through the very beginning when they're recruiting. So we have a software, web-based software that we're using for recruitment. And then it stops there, and then we use a different software for all our onboarding, and we use a different software for all of our evaluations. And so we're looking at combining that, and if one of these outsourcing, one of these vendors, if they're able to provide that service to us, that would help take off some of that workload on just managing, combine it into one system. That would help us manage all of our, from the onboarding, the recruitment, retention, benefits administration. And so we're looking at a lot of different options, and there are vendors out there that can do all these services for us. And we just wanted to get, see if you had any questions about where we're at before we kind of move forward with this process.
Any questions?
I have a few
Mr. Cepeda.
comments and questions. First off, thank you, Justin, for looking into this. I think this is moving us into the 20th century. Hopefully we'll be able to get away from paper enrollment. So this is a great step. I'm pushing for this for the whole district. So this is a great first step into that. I know that when I did my enrollment district, doing paper, I was flabbergasted going, why am I filling out a piece of paper? We have computers now, so this is great. Some of my questions, the benefit enrollment systems that we have, do we know if they are able to, and I don't know if you have a list of them already or not, and I don't know what the costs are, but some of them, just so you can have in the back of your pocket here, some of them might be willing to reduce their fees if we allow them to do voluntary benefit enrollment. And one of them, for example, is pet insurance.
Mhm.
Right? We currently don't offer pet insurance to our employees. It could be critical illness. It could be any kind of other insurance, additional voluntary insurance that is for the employees to sign up for should they want it. It's not
Sure.
district paid. But sometimes what the enrollment firms will do is say, if you allow me to sell this to your employees, I will therefore reduce the fees for you in the administration cost. So asking them that question to see if we can get an offset, and that would help us. I don't know how many benefits we want to roll out or can roll out at once to sort of either getting that benefit administration fee very low or almost free at times. And then depending on the benefit enrollment system you go with and the payroll system, do either one of them speak or integrate with CalPERS? Because we do have CalPERS for medical, so making that file fee over to them.
Yeah. So the way that this would work is, so we're going to continue with our current. We have a benefit broker there. So there's CalPERS that handles the medical benefits, and then we have a broker that negotiates rates for us for the medical, life, the EAP, and they could add on, if we ask them, they could add on some of these different other insurances that you were mentioning. And those are things that we could look at, and that wouldn't change from going to using a company that would help process it. Essentially what would happen is like a benefit processor, when there's open enrollment or a new hire, that person, instead of HR staff going into their systems and enrolling somebody, the benefit processor, they would do that on our behalf. And then they would also make sure that our bills are reconciled, that we're not getting charged for people who may have separated from the district, that they would make sure that we're only paying for the people who are active, employees. So those are kind of some slightly separate, but there we could work through and look at some of those different options, and some of them are related to our, the MOUs and the negotiations with the union.
But for the benefit enrollment site though, so when the employee currently the employee fills out a piece of paper to enroll in CalPERS Medical.
Right.
And that's your CalPERS Medical. They go in, does the HR department then enter it onto the CalPERS website? And
that's correct. Yeah. And
or do they
right.
send an Excel file of all employees, open enrollment, et cetera?
They would go in and manually enter some of that information. As far as I'm aware, I'd have to double check with Tanya and HR on exactly how they're doing that. But the company would do that, a lot of that for us, and it wouldn't be paper-based. They would somebody would go log into their profile, make those changes, and then it would be done on our behalf.
So on your apps, is it on, that means that other company is doing it, or do they send us an Excel document? Because what I'm used to is the employee goes in, and because I do benefits for a living, so the employee goes in and signs up for their benefits online, let's say for open enrollment.
Right.
And then that system kicks out an Excel document that you then send over to CalPERS, hopefully. There's some systems that allow it. You send that over to CalPERS, and then CalPERS then puts it into their system, and the employee for open enrollment makes the changes, et cetera, et cetera. And then you send that same file over to your dental carrier or your vision carrier. And
right. I have to look into the exact details of some of the options that we're looking at on how that would work. And it probably depends on which vendor we would end up using on the specific. So I can't answer if they would just spit out a file and we would send it, or they would do it for us. And they would take that file and then enroll on our behalf.
And that would also eliminate, human error and time.
Right.
So if the employee has to fill it out online just for our HR department to send it over to CalPERS manually, they have to retype everything. That's going to defeat a lot of the purpose of the manual typing and
right.
the error.
Yeah, and we want to reduce that where possible. Reduce double data entry and create reports and files that get sent over instead of the double entry or triple entry that happens occasionally.
And then for the payroll side, would they also allow single sign-on, or not even single sign-on, just a sign-on where the employee can go in and retrieve their pay stubs? So we
Yes.
don't have to receive paper pay stubs in the mail every day? Is there a way to opt out? Because I want to opt out. I don't need them. I
Yeah,
need them too.
Right. So moving to a different system would put that control on the employee. So they could go in and go and look at them, download them, but you wouldn't get the pay stubs anymore. You wouldn't. But they would be available to you through an online portal where you'd have a login, username and login. Would go in and you could get however many far back, how many months worth of pay stubs. You could also get your W-2s online. We don't have that functionality right now.
Okay. Perfect.
Justin, we have the ability currently, people don't have to get papers, they get a direct deposit email, right?
They can get an email. Yes, employees can get an email, but they cannot, unless they go through their email, they cannot go into a portal and easily go and get past pay stubs that have already.
Right, but to address Director Zepeda's issue with getting a paper.
We could change that now. We could make it an email if that was what you.
Who do I send that to? Because I don't need, that's just a stamp in an envelope that's being wasted.
Yeah, you can send that to me and I'll forward it off to payroll to
Thank you.
change that. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Sorry for a sidetrack there.
No problem.
Thank you, Lisa, for that. And that's all the questions I have so far. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Director Stanley, Director Alvarado, Director Weiner, any questions?
I have questions.
Yes, ma'am. You may proceed.
Okay, so currently we, correct me if I'm wrong, we have 2 men and 2 men on payroll and 1 female as a temp working in finance. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so will we be losing any of those people, or they will be doing other things? What's the plan on that?
So they would be doing other things is essentially what would happen. The payroll doesn't go away 100%. Instead of, there's 1 person who is essentially dedicated almost 100% of their time to payroll processing now. That would be reduced to closer to 20% because payroll doesn't we still have some responsibilities even if we're using another company to actually do the processing and cutting the paychecks for us. And so we have enough work within finance that's not getting done right now just because of staffing that can be reassigned. And so I don't anticipate that they would be immediately, they would still have their work to do. It would just be slightly different from what they're doing now.
And if I can clarify, it's not 3 positions that are dedicated solely to payroll. So there are 2 accounting technician positions that do all of the different functions that are within finance and 1 supervisor of that group. So there's only 1 person who does, sorry, Justin, I forgot what you said, maybe like 70 to 80% of their time is spent on payroll. Is that about right?
They spend the majority. Occasionally, the other accounting technician assists with payroll, but it's 1 person who's dedicated to
right.
the
So it's
process.
really, yeah. So the impact is really on 1 person, primarily where their duties would change to focus on some of the other things that are within finance. And again, as Justin said, there's still a role that we have to play with payroll. It's not completely hands off, but say that 80% goes down to maybe 15 to 20% or whatever that number might be. But I just want to make it clear, it's not 3 people 100% dedicated to payroll currently.
Right.
Well, I was just talking about finance and generally. So when I've had employees, I engaged a payroll company, and they took care of all the taxes. They sent me all the posters I had to post up. They generated all the direct deposits or pay stubs or checks, and I didn't have to do anything. So is this what you're expecting a payroll company to do?
Yes, yeah, they would be processing the payroll, the checks. They would be doing direct deposits for our behalf. They would also be doing the tax filings, the quarterly tax filings to the feds and the state, as well as W-2, you know, in January. They would also do that for us.
So what about, you know, odd things like, for example, directors go to conferences? Would they handle stuff like that, or would that still be handled by staff?
That would still be handled by staff. So if a director is going to a conference and wanting a reimbursement, that would still be handled by staff. So there would still be some sort of form to fill out, which is a separate item that we're working on to make it, you know, paperless or make it easier where you could go online and fill out forms for reimbursement. But we're not quite there yet on that side.
Okay, and so this is probably directed more towards Lisa. When I first came on, which was not so long after you first came on, I remember hearing about this program that handles all this payroll stuff and how it was really great. And now it's really, over the years, it's sort of sound like it's not really great. Is that true, or am I missing something?
So that's the system that Justin was referring to. That's ExecuTime. So the district had purchased ExecuTime before I got here, and they had never really implemented it. And there were years of struggle, and there were a lot of complaints. I think that the complaints at that point even reached the board level, and we did a presentation. We had one person who was previously in payroll, and she really was the primary user of the system and really the person who was getting it implemented. And she felt very strongly and convinced the rest of us in business services that we should continue to proceed with it. So we did. Unfortunately, it has never been a great system for us, and more than anything, it's really, really difficult for our staff, not just the, say, finance staff, but for the rest of our staff to use. So it is definitely, and it doesn't provide even though we had intended, it never provided the self-service options, which we're really looking for. So yeah, the system hasn't, and we don't know if it was the configuration from the beginning, but they spent a ton of time trying to get it configured properly. It's just never really worked. But I want to reiterate one of the main things too with doing this that Justin already said, which is, you know, we are not payroll experts. This is not, our staff is very small. They are not payroll experts. As a result, in addition to the system, we've had a lot of errors, and when we have these exceptions, our staff is not really well equipped to deal with those. And then that ends up creating a lot of frustration on the other side. And, you know, Director Stanley, you yourself have had that experience where things have happened with your payments. So we really want to address that issue too and make it so that our employees can have a self-service option in their paychecks. You know, paychecks are one of those things you got to get it right. You just do.
Yeah.
So it's important for us to do that, and this I think will provide that. We also don't have coverage issues. You know, when you have such a small staff and something like payroll has to happen, if you have one person out, it really creates a huge strain on the rest of staff trying to you know, cover it, and we won't have that problem either. So yeah.
So
go ahead.
Are we gonna like get rid of that computer system by?
I believe so. Justin, go ahead.
Yes, yeah, we would. So the current timekeeping system that we're using we would stop using that altogether and go to a new system that would be online, you know, very easy to remote, more user friendly, and a lot of the systems would already be combined, so we wouldn't have to have two systems talking with each other, which is basically what's happening right now. So it's we're looking to have really one, you know, we call it a human resource system, or is it called HCM, to make it really to improve, streamline all the different steps.
No, it all makes sense to me. Is that we're basically hiring experts who are keeping up to date, as you said, with all the tax laws and whatever else, without having to pay the benefits of pensions and health insurance and all of that. So that seems like it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, I've been listening to this discussion back and forth for the last 4 years about the computer system, and it just never seemed to work out, as Lisa said. So it's time to go, I guess.
Right.
And while this will save us, we think it will save us some dollars for sure. The primary driver is really about the being able to provide self-service and improve customer seamless service and seamless, use. And again, just getting us to a place where most people have been with payroll systems for a long time. So that's the primary driver of this initiative.
Now, does this company that we'll be searching for, is there anything specific about us being a special district that makes it more difficult to find the right people, or is it not such a big deal?
From discussions that I've had with some of these vendors, we are actually pretty straightforward and fairly easy for them. We are not complex. We don't have operations in multiple states. We don't have all these thousands of different kind of benefit or bonus codes or things like that. So from the discussions that I've had preliminarily, they said like we have set schedules. We have we're a smaller mid-size employer. We don't have that many. They're pretty confident that this would be something that it can handle fairly easily. It's within their wheelhouse. Like that's not a challenge for them.
They definitely have other special districts are using outside vendors
Yes.
to do payroll processing. Even cities do it. It's a little more complex in cities for different reasons, but even at that, cities are able to overcome that and use this type of a service. So we're, as Justin said, we're actually much more like a business in that sense, and so pretty simple compared to a lot of the types of organizations. But there are lots of special districts clients, and that I've also talked to them that are very happy with using an outside company to do this.
All right, thank you.
Are there any additional questions?
No.
President Alvarado?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Weiner? Oh, that's right, in the shadows.
He's just
Thank you very much.
Can I, Director Stanley, raise something really important too? Some companies do outsource their outsourcing, or their employees are based outside of the U.S. So just making sure that if our payroll or benefits or anything is getting processed, that it's processed within the U.S. and that they're not using somebody outside of the country, because we are a government agency. We want to make sure we maintain it. So just a
Yes.
side note. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sir Justin. Appreciate it. Madam Secretary. You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Do we move on to the next item?
Yes, ma'am. Por favor.
Okay. The next item is matters for staff/general manager. A, reports on issues or matters pertaining to the work of the committee.
I don't have anything. Justin, Andrew, Tanya is there. I don't know if you guys have anything. Justin, you're muted.
You're both on mute.
No, there's nothing at this time.
Nothing further.
Tanya, do you have anything?
I have nothing.
Oh, the best type of reports. Madam Secretary, your turn again. You're on mute.
Sorry. Number 7, matters from members of the board. A, reports on issues pertaining to the work of the committee.
We will start with my fellow committee member, Director Zepeda? Nada?
Nothing for me. We already, in the last meeting, we already talked about the agendas we want to be brought forth, and I think we're just waiting for those agendas to come forward. So other than that, I'm all good.
Thank you, sir. Other director? Director Stanley?
Are we on B yet or no? Just A?
We're on A. Just A. Do you have any?
Nothing for me.
Okay, thank you. President Navarro?
No, I'm good.
Mr. Shadow? Weiner? Director Weiner? And I have nada. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
Item B is future agenda items, informal observations and inquiry regarding the business of the district or requests for placement of items of interest on a future agenda.
Now we are on B. Okay, Director Zepeda. Director Zepeda first.
Nothing right now, no.
Thank you, sir. Director Stanley.
I would like to get an update when it's convenient as to, and maybe this ties into what Andrew was talking about with health and safety coordinator, but I want to know what our plans are for the future with this health and safety issues in general. And you know, the talk is that we might be on quarantine for the rest of the summer. So is there any plan for accommodating the public to get permits or whatever the heck they need to do? So can we get some sort of update on that type of stuff?
And actually, let me ask Lisa this question, because I'm thinking that's not a committee report. I'm thinking that's something that goes through the board meeting.
Yeah, I would agree. It's something we can certainly give the board an update on. I mean, just briefly, obviously, as the situation changes, we will continue to change our response. And if this continues to go longer, there are things that we need to, we can't stay on indefinite, kind of deferring things and not issuing permits and things like that. So, but some of that also is dependent on the orders of the governor and or officers. So we can certainly, Andrew could talk briefly about that on Wednesday at the board meeting when he gives an update on the COVID-19 response.
Yes, we can talk. We don't have a lot of information on that because, like Lisa said, right now the orders are pretty clear, and that is to shut it down. But we do have to start thinking about it, and we have been thinking about what happens when we start to bring some services back. And the one in particular you mentioned is the permitting, which is currently a paper-only process and requires the contact, which is why one reason why that's been so minimized and consistent with what Justin was talking about earlier on a number of our systems being like that, and we're trying to take a look at upgrading those in the future. But also some of the other staff or some of our collection service workers, we can't not do maintenance on the system for too long a period of time, or we start having emergency response calls because we get backups and things like that. So it is something we have to consider and start working toward. It won't be a flick the switch and everything will be back to normal. We'll probably have to have some certain protocols when the office does start to get filled up again. What protocols will we have within the office? There's a lot to be worked out. It's all a new process.
One of the things that triggered this question, Andrew, was I stopped in at my local 7-Eleven yesterday, and they have plexiglass that was installed as a temporary measure, but you can't get within 6 feet of the people who work there behind the counter. And so, we have 3 counter spaces between the plant and the admin building, so as staff is thinking about stuff, protection for our staff from the public, and maybe something along those lines might be warranted.
Yes, that's exactly the kind of thing we need to be thinking about and putting into place. How will we go about doing that? Allowing the public inside the lobby, or having some kind of a drop box outside, or some kind of plexiglass shield, requiring anyone from the public to be wearing some kind of protection when they come into the building. I mean, there's a whole number of things we have to look into and get a sense of how to make that work.
Well, then maybe a better topic, agenda topic that we can discuss in the planning committee would be, and then we can take it to the full board, would be social distancing protocols moving into the future, or safety protocols, right? Safety protocols that we can be putting into effect. And we can have that discussion in our planning committee meeting, and then move it into what we would like to see. I know we're having this discussion at my office about what we now have to be putting into our contracts based on the county Contra Costa and Alameda County Public Health Department guidelines. We're having to actually look at the attachments and put some type of SIP attachments to our contracts, because we have to halt some construction and things like that. So maybe we can have that as an agenda item and just have that discussion.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good discussion. We need to look at what we do on a more permanent basis. I mean, certainly we're impacted by this now. However, whatever the magic date is that everybody returns, what I've talked to with staff is that we have to prepare for the possibility that when people return to quote unquote normal operations, there could be another spike, right? And that people are back and they start to get sick, and we get a lot of people going out because now they're exposed to each other. So I think that that's something that we were already talking about and thinking about, and also just in the future, what is it that we want to do to sort of make sure that we are continuing our social distancing. And one of the things that I've been talking about for a while, and now again, one of the benefits of all of this is that the more things that we can provide to our community to do online, the better. The more things that you can do electronically, the better. And that's something that people actually want. We don't have a ton of foot traffic into our offices, but a lot of those people who do come in would probably prefer to actually be able to do a lot of that through self-service. So that'll be part of, a push for us going forward. We will be very much moving in the direction of self-service, doing things electronically. It lines up with sort of these permanent social distancing, and also better customer service for the community, as well as meeting our environmental targets of wanting to reduce paper and reduce carbon footprint. So all of those things actually line up very well. So we can certainly talk about that more and just what we're thinking about and the initiatives around that.
Yeah, I think that would be a good topic. Yeah, thank you for that.
Ms. Chair, may I ask a question as well?
Yes, sir.
So I like this agenda topic for next month. I think that would be great. And if we can look as part in there, this thing is changing so much all the time, but they're looking at antibody testing, especially for employers that are crucial to the workforce right now. So they're looking into temperature checking when the employees walk into work, seeing if they're also doing a attestation, asking them, have you had a temperature this weekend? Does anybody in your household have a temperature this weekend? So just asking them certain questions to make sure that they're safe. And then when they're there, possibly doing antibody testing. That won't necessarily show if they have COVID now, but they might show they've had it before, or there's a string of it somewhere in their body. So we can just start testing for something. So there's a few options out there that are coming out, and every day there's something new coming out, new guidelines. But I don't know, maybe by the time we meet again, That'll be a whole new different test, but just looking at different tests so that our employees are well and feel safe when coming into work. So thank you.
Yeah, my sister has to have hers checked every day when she goes into work. Same thing, yeah.
And the testing, the temperature testing can't be done by one of us, right? By an employee. It has to be done by a specific company.
Yes.
Because you have HIPAA involved in there, right? So somebody else has to come in and do all of that testing. So it can't be, Andrew at the front door says, hey, you want to come into work? Put your mouth out, right? It's got to be somebody else. So.
Well,
Exactly.
right now, as part of the county health order, we're having people essentially self-certify, answer a series of those questions that you mentioned, Dr. Cepeda, Director Cepeda.
Doctor.
And then we're keeping track of that. But even taking the temperature with so much of the transmission happening from both pre-symptomatic and asymptomatic virus carriers, it's really that's just one more thing that it's kind of like not really going to answer our question. The antibody test, that'll be an interesting one to see, and that we're certainly going to have to wait for the health protocols on that before we start saying, show us your card to show us you have the antibodies or you can't come back to work. What might happen with that, though, is that rather than not a negative where it's you may not come without it, that if you can show you have the antibodies, it may be that people, they can be in the office sooner or in closer proximity with people than might otherwise be allowable. But all these things, like you said, it's evolving. And then there's a lot of personnel issues that we'll have to lean on Tanya for.
All right. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Sorry, that could fall under genetic testing under EEO, so that could be an issue. So
Exactly.
I would tell you that checking temperature is one thing, but asking people anything regarding their the other thing could be very invasive, and
Yep.
so requiring antibodies testing could, because that is the EEO has very hard line about genetic testing,
Yeah.
and asking about antibodies it could cross the line. So I don't think that's going to be allowable.
I don't think so either, and yet it's being discussed at the federal and state levels. But
That's because they don't respect the EEO policy.
there you go.
Some companies are
But,
doing it already.
Our direction on those types of things is primarily going to come from the county health officer,
Yes.
and that's really what we have focused on the most, and that is the most immediate to us. And quite honestly, I think that the source of information that we trust the most, after it's been vetted by our own county health officers, who I think have shown some great leadership here in the Bay Area.
Yes, this is true. Yeah. But I know my own EEO certification says that that's genetic testing, and I don't think that's allowable. So, sounds good. Sounds like a great idea, but I don't think that's going to be allowed.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of gray lines in there, but there are some companies that are doing it with some of the tests that the FDA has loosened their rules on that, on all these companies that are coming out with these preliminary antibody testing.
Yeah.
So, things are changing, but just a thought. So, all right.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think, Director Stanley, you had your hand up? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I typed it out, my message. Everyone should be able to see it. I was just letting Andrew know that when we get our little story on Wednesday, that I would like to know the status of if we are able to, if West County Wastewater District has been able to obtain and have available to employees, gloves, masks, hand sanitizer, stuff like that, Lysol, whatever it is that they need to wipe things down, do they have those materials available to clean their workspace before they take over from somebody who worked before them? So I can
Yes.
wait till Wednesday to get
Yeah,
that
we'll
answer.
address it. We can address it on Wednesday. We're getting kind of far off that agenda item.
Yeah.
So want to be
Yeah.
respectful to the process that we didn't let the public know we'd be talking in depth about this.
Yeah.
Anything else on future agenda items while we're here?
No.
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Madam Secretary, next item, please.
The next item is adjournment.
Yay, appreciate it. Only 2 minutes after 11. Appreciate all the time. Thank you so much.